کنفرانس‌های بین‌المللی با شرکت شخصیت‌های سیاسی، تحلیلگران، متخصصان و پارلمانترها درباره رویارویی مقاومت و قیام مردم ایران با دیکتاتوری آخوندی.
کنفرانس آلترناتیو رژیم آخوندی. سخنرانی‌های سناتور جوزف لیبرمن، کاندیدای معاون ریاست جمهوری آمریکا 2000، مارک شورت، رئیس دفتر معاون رئیس جمهور آمریکا 2021.
سناتور جوزف لیبرمن، کاندیدای معاون ریاست جمهوری آمریکا 2000. قطعاً در ایران یک آلترناتیو وجود دارد. این آلترناتیو یک جمهوری دموکراتیک است، یک حکومت مردمی توسط مردم و برای مردم است و ایران امروز بیش از هر زمان دیگری به آن نزدیک است.
مریم رجوی یک زن پایبند به اصول است. او الگویی را خلق کرد که اکنون در این جنبش خارق العاده به رهبری زنان در سراسر ایران خود را نشان می‌دهد.
Senator Lieberman, Tony talked about walking the walk. You know, when you look at the MEK and the NCRI record, there's been tremendous amount of sacrifice. Whether it's that level of sacrifice or the actual loss of lives, more than 30,000 people were killed just in one summer of 1988, or even the ongoing executions and torture in Iran. So my question to you is, as we look at the concept of alternative when it comes to Iran, there are people that are out there talking about there is no alternative. What is their motivation? Why are they doing this?
That's a great question, which I'm glad to answer. Let me say first how great it is to be back with this community. I feel like we're family here. Yeah. Let me, before I answer your question, Rami, let me just say congratulations on this extraordinary victory in the courts of Paris today. Wow. As I'm sure many of you know, certainly the Americans who are here, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King famously said that the moral arc of the universe often bends slowly, but it always bends toward justice. In this case, the moral arc of the universe here in Paris bent quickly toward justice. It is only because the NCRI MEK, faced with the demonization of the regime in Tehran, the threats and pressure that they issued and sent forth to the government here, that the NCRI said, we will not be deterred. We will not be deterred. We will go to court and challenge the legal system of this country. Liberté, equality, fraternity, with the emphasis on liberté. How could you possibly in France prohibit a group of people from peacefully demonstrating in the public square? And that persistence on behalf of a principle, fearless, exactly what you said, was rewarded by the courts here, the judge here in Paris. And may I say this, you gave the French and France an opportunity to return to the high ground. You made this country better than it was for a short while when they banned that rally. Amen. And I can just see the frustration and anger in the halls of power in Tehran. Oh, Raisi's probably slamming the table. We should have had better lawyers or whatever it was. Anyway, a victory for freedom in Iran, a victory for freedom in France, and an extraordinary setback for the tyrants in Tehran. So let me talk a little bit about the allegation, which comes mostly from the government in Tehran, that there is no alternative to the government. So the US, the West, everyone else has to compromise with them. Incidentally, that is exactly the message that Adolf Hitler gave out in the 1930s that brought Chamberlain to Munich to make that weak pact that really led to World War II. The history cries out to us not to repeat that again. But I want to say that beyond the question of is there an alternative, there is the question that the regime raises, which is, do we need an alternative? The fact is that, as they would allege and try to get people to believe, this regime is forever. Well, history tells us no regime is totalitarian as this will ever be forever. That's what they said to the American freedom fighters in the 18th century. How can you possibly liberate yourself from the most powerful empire in the world, Great Britain? Power. And the lessons of history go on and on like this. No totalitarian regime can last forever. It's not in the nature of history. That's for sure. We can never acknowledge that there is no alternative to a totalitarian government, certainly not in Iran. And we know there is an alternative. It is the people of Iran. It is a democratic republic, a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And Iran is closer to that today than ever before, because the regime is weaker than it's ever been before. The sanctions are hurting. The demonstrations after Mahsa Amini's killing by the so-called morality police are the broadest ever against this regime of the mullahs. So they're at their weakest. And there will be a need for an alternative. And there's a need for an organization to lead the way to that alternative. And of course, it is the NCRI-MEK. The NCR-MEK are ready. I don't think that there has ever been a group of rebels to tyranny that has ever been as prepared to lead the transition to freedom as people in this movement are. The NCRI and MEK have earned the right to lead the transition to a democratic republic because they have fought consistently for a singular principle, and that, whether it was against the Shah or against the mullahs, and that is freedom for the people of Iran. And as Rami's question suggests, they have done so with a single-minded devotion. It has been the priority focus of their lives. Many thousands have given their lives for this cause. They have earned the right to lead this transition, but that's not enough. Often in life, we don't get what we have earned. The MEK NCRI is ready. There is a transition plan. The plan calls for elections by the people. within a limited period of time to elect a constituent assembly, which will then adopt a constitution and elect leaders of the country. No one else has that plan, and the NCRI is ready to implement it. The other demonization that the regime employs against their opposition is that there's no unity. Well, the first thing is the NCRI is itself a constituent assembly. It's a unified organization of opponents of the regime. And Mrs. Rajvi, the leadership has been very clear that they will welcome anyone else to this cause, to this fight for freedom, which is to liberate the people of Iran and move to a democratic, free republic in the country that you are calling homeland. Now, there's one other element that entitles or qualifies the NCRI for leadership. No movement can succeed without a leader. And this movement has an extraordinary leader. Meriem Rajvi is a woman of principle. She's a woman of courage. She's a woman who is a strong and strategic leader. She actually created the role model that I think is now playing itself out across Iran with this extraordinary movement led by women. Well, the NCRI has been led by a woman for a long time, and that woman is more ready than anyone else to lead the transition to freedom in Iran. Now, I'll say just a final word, and I take the liberty of speaking for the American delegation that is here, a broadly diverse, bipartisan. We're here because we believe our national values require us to be here, our belief in freedom. And we will not yield, as you will not yield, until we hold a gathering of this kind in freedom and triumph in the city of Tehran with a new free government.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much, Senator Lieberman.
مارک شورت، رئیس دفتر معاون رئیس جمهور آمریکا 2021. شما دیدگاه خود را در برنامه 10 ماده‌ای ترسیم کرده اید و من فکر می کنم ضروری است مردم ایران بدانند چشماندازی وجود دارد که شما چه مسیری را طی می کنید.
Mark, I want to turn over to you. I know you've been with Vice President Pence on many discussions talking about Iran. And I know Vice President has, when he visited Ashraf 3, he raised the issue of one of the biggest misunderstanding and the myth is that there is no alternative. But there is one, and he was referring to the leadership of Meriem Rajvi, the alternative of the National Council of Resistance, as a coalition that is popular. It has popularity within Iran. It has credibility. It has authenticity. It has that historic record that really stands on its own compared to anyone else out there. Give us your thoughts about the importance of the alternative that resonates with the Iranian society and to what Senator Lieberman was talking about, the call for the non-nuclear secular republic Iran.
Well, thank you, Professor, and thank you for including me on this esteemed panel. I certainly appreciate it. It's always an honor to be with you, and it's impossible to go and not come away moved by the plight of many in MEK who have suffered at the hands of Raisi, and to also be moved by Meriem Rajvi and what you are, the movement you are leading. Sir, I think it's important to note what the West can do to help create the conditions for an alternative. And you know, my experience was serving in the Trump-Pence administration. Before serving as the Vice President's Chief of Staff, I was Director of Legislative Affairs for Donald Trump. And I know that we're a bipartisan organization. I think that there's no Democrat who's had, or no American, frankly, who's had a more clarion call for freedom and a stronger champion for freedom across the Middle East than Senator Lieberman. And he's somebody that we all, on our side of the aisle, respect enormously. But
Through here.
But I must say that through the prism that I had, you know, we had witnessed an Obama-Biden administration that I think in their effort to appease the Ayatollah and the mullahs had reached an Iranian nuclear deal that, despite its name, basically created a path for Iran to have nuclear weapons. We sent pallets of cash, billions of dollars, to the mullahs in Iran. It emboldened the Ayatollah. And when we came into office, I can't tell you that when Donald Trump kept his commitment to pull us out of the Iran nuclear deal, how many European leaders called the White House begging us to reconsider and to please stay in the deal. And many of them enjoyed the commerce with Iran and didn't want to lose that. And it seems the wrong sacrifice on the backs of the freedom of those who are fighting for their own freedom in Iran, that the West would be making deals of that nature. And I'm really proud that our administration pulled out of the Iran nuclear deal. I'm proud that our administration levied enormous sanctions against Iran that I think crippled the despotic regime there. I'm incredibly proud of the decisive decision that the president and the vice president took to take out Qasem Soleimani on the battlefield.
That's right. That's right.
A man not only responsible for the murder of many Iranians, but also hundreds of American soldiers on the battlefields. And I'm proud that our administration was willing to take those stands, and I think crippled the Ayatollah in ways that created conditions for change. I would like to simply, I guess, wrap up with the comment that, you know, despite concerns about where I see the current administration in America, I think there's obviously much hope. And there's hope in the numbers of you gathering. There's hope in your victories here this week. There's hope in people recognizing your movement. And so the winds of change are blowing, and it's essential that your voice continue to be heard. So I thank you for making the stand that you have, the fact that more and more Americans are noticing, that Congress is noticing, and I believe it's going to be essentially important that the next administration in Washington, D.C. be one that has a clear-eyed view toward Iran.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mark. I want to go around and ask all of our panelists. We talked about the issue of alternative. We talked about the role of Meriem Rajavi, the path forward. The next two panels are going to be discussing the U.S. policy on Iran and the European policy on Iran. But in your mind, if you were to give top 3 things to members of media and top 3 items that you want to message to the people of Iran in terms of what to look for in an alternative that is credible and authentic, what would that be, Senator Torricelli?
Okay, let's talk to the people of Iran. Many can hear our voices today. It's important they know part of what's being said here. And let's do it through you. I've said these numbers to some of you before. Overthrowing the government of Tehran, of course it's hard. Impossible? Not at all. Not even close. How many people went back to St. Petersburg to overthrow the Tsar and the Kerensky government with Lenin? How many? 24. When Napoleon returned to France, how many people left with him? 40. When Castro returned to overthrow dictatorship in Cuba from Guatemala, how many people did he have with him? 25. When the ANC was taking down the government of South Africa, how many core members were there in the ANC? 200. Joe Lieberman talked about the American Revolution. At Valley Forge, how many soldiers did Washington have? 800. Tyrants fall of their own weight because people will not stand for it anymore. We have amassed a massive movement around the globe of enormous resources, a political core, an inspiring leader in Madame Rajvi. You are bringing down the mullahs. There's a reason Raïs are called Macron. There's a reason why they are chasing the MEK all around the globe. Because they know, even if you don't, even if you're wrong, even if you don't believe, you're wrong. They believe. The mullahs may be evil, but they're not stupid. They know this movement brings down the regime. The day is coming. And to your earlier question, what you've done by helping this organization is that when they come down, there doesn't have to be chaos, another lost decade, more poverty, more abuse, another Shah. Fascism doesn't have to fill the vacuum. We have the makings of a democratic revolution that knows where it is going, the Iran that it wants. The movement is here. And you've built that. And for that, you and your family and those who follow you should be eternally proud.
Thank you so much. Linda, I'm going to turn over to you. As I said, this program is being heard in Iran. What is your message to the women and girls in Iran when they think about the alternative?
Well,
what is your advice to them?
I'm glad, Rami, that you asked me that question, because as I listened to Bob in his very eloquent call to the people of Iran and to his prediction that there would be one person, I am here to predict today that that one person is going to be a woman. It
looks like it.
It is not. It does not go without notice that the uprising that began last fall began over a young woman's death. And it was women who have been abused by this regime. And I believe that the fact that Maryam Rajavi is a Muslim woman and leads this movement is an inspiration to all those girls and young women and old women in Iran, and that they are fed up. They are fed up with being treated not as citizens, but as second-class persons, of being denied the right to decide how they dress, how they believe, how they worship, what careers they can go into, how they can move about a city with or without being accompanied by men. This is the year 2023. It is not the year 1423. And we need to understand that the women of Iran are fed up. And they, I believe, Bob Torricelli, are going to be the ones who lead this revolution.
So I'm going to pivot a little bit just to kind of sum up our panel discussion. I think what I've heard from all of you today is the attributes of an alternative that is resilient, that is committed, that has the tenacity to withstand the challenges of the time. It has leadership with a strategic vision, and it knows who they're fighting against and what they're fighting for. So, Senator Lieberman, what would you say to the people of Iran to really understand how to rise above the noise that the regime is imposing in the narrative today and gain the focus back?
Okay, I appreciate the question, and it's really important because though we come together again here in Paris this time, in part to fortify each other in our belief and work for a free Iran, really the heroes are the freedom fighters in Iran. They're on the streets, as the MEK fighters have been on the streets for decades now, and they are the ones who have helped to bring about the change. We're here to say to them, we're with you. As difficult and dangerous as what you're doing, we are with you, and we will continue to be with you. And please know that you are making progress. We talk about the NCRI. I said that the MEK has done more work on the ground than any other single organization against this regime and against the Shah for more than 4 decades. But the NCRI has put together a unique and unequaled organization globally, both of Iranians who are no longer in Iran and of people of all nationalities who've been brought to the cause of a free Iran. The gathering of world leaders here in Paris for this meeting, both today and tomorrow, could not be brought about by any other organization opposed to the tyrants in Tehran. So I would say first to you, the freedom fighters, who are the ultimate heroes of this struggle, know that your support is growing. I can tell you in the United States, in Washington, where there was always bipartisan support for the people of Iran against the regime, look at the extraordinary majority members of the House of Representatives. Both parties signed a letter supporting freedom of Iran and the NCRI and Mrs. Rajvi. Amazing accomplishment. So I say to the people in Tehran who are fighting for their freedom, don't lose heart. I know you won't, really. You fight 24 hours a day. Believe in the inevitability of your victory, and know that you frighten the government of Iran more than the United States, the European powers, the Arabs who don't like them, don't trust them, because you threaten their regime. I am the chair of a group called United Against Nuclear Iran. I was talking to somebody recently who said about this work to stop their nuclear program, which of course is in the 10-point plan of NCRI and Mrs. Rajvi. I talked to him about it, and he said, and I share it with you now, and I know there's a history and love of chess in Iran, that you have to think of the nuclear development program as the queen on the chessboard. And but the regime is the king. And the king will only give up the queen, the nuclear program, if the king, the regime, feels that its survival is threatened. Well, dear friends, the freedom fighters, the MEK, those who came into the streets in response to the murder of Mahsa Amini, the NCRI, the MEK, Mrs. Rajvi, you are going right for the king. And they know that, and that's why they fear you, that's why they attack you, that's why they demonize you. But honest to God, they will never stop you and us until they are gone and you are free.
That's right. Thank you. Thank you so much. Mark, as we close this panel, I'd love to hear your thoughts and your message for the people of Iran when it comes to the issue of alternative.
Well, to the issue of alternatives and sort of the three things that we ask of y'all to keep in mind, you know, our Bible tells us that where there is no vision, the people perish. And I think we should give more attention to the fact that you and MEK have laid out your vision in that 10-point plan. And I think that's essential for the people of Iran to know, so they have a vision of where you're going. I'd say second that you know, the senator spoke about the inevitability of your victory. And I think that in that long arc of history that he also commented on, I think along that arc you will see the way that all despotic regimes have ended and the justice that eventually is meted out. And I think for those who question that, you know, all you need to do is ask the French about King Louis and his ultimate fate. I think that's the fate of most despots. And I think that that is something to keep in mind about the inevitability of freedom.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So, ladies and gentlemen, as we close this panel, I think you all heard from our speakers today on what it takes to be a real alternative to the Iran. The long history of human rights violations, threats to the world peace and stability, versus those who are fake alternatives or manufactured alternatives by the regime itself. So I want to thank all of our speakers, all of our panelists. It's been a great pleasure to be with you on this important topic.